have to say, it just went way beyond my expectation.
It's like nothing that we had in D4.
Pure hatred, they're Mephisto's army. We wanted them to feel a little bit more different from your typical demon family.
Everyone's quality was top-notch. But at the time, we didn't know if it was going to work.
I think where we landed is going to turn some heads.
This is not your normal thing. It's the living form of hatred.
The new monster class that we could introduce, they're called Hollows. These Hollows have actually been around for like millennia. Mephisto at some point did go to Nahantu a long time ago, and these Hollows were a reaction of Mephisto being in Nahantu at the time, and then they went dormant.
Bringing Mephisto in the Soul Stone seems like the right thing to do for Nerel, but it has a chain reaction that I don't think anybody was prepared for. The Hollows are really rife throughout Nahantu now that Mephisto is back, and just visually, like, horribly disgusting, and sort of made up of the things that have been consumed by the Hollows.
Yeah, they're an extension of evil, infecting wildlife and other monsters and people with this thing called Ichor, and they're just sort of going mad.
When we're designing the Hollows, the main thing that we wanted to push was just if hatred came to life, what would it look like? So we're thinking this black goo that's kind of like formless, but also have this red anger energy inside of it. And then with concept, we just want to make, cool monsters. What if it's 3 legs? What if it's no legs? What if it has like 3 arms? So we pushed a lot of like options and exploration. And then from then on, like everyone from narrative to design and concept would talk about it. It's like, okay, we like this one, and then we can push it and move it further.
The Hollow family is made up of 4 members: the Swarmer, the Spitter, the Caster, and the Brutes. A big thing for me was that the family need to be overwhelming without just relying on pure numbers. So they're gonna get stronger over time if you let them fester, their hatred after all. The Swarmer can teleport and attack you from behind, from the sides. The Spitter is a slug with legs. They spew out this vomit stream of goo. The Brute is the big hulking slow guy of the family. He has the shield that's buffing and making the rest of the army stronger. Caster is responsible for creating new swarmers. They also will channel onto a specific hollow and imbue them with extra hatred, makes them stronger and more deadly.
The Hollowcaster's role serves as an elegant, hovering, yet menacing dungeon character in the game, really informed many of our design ideas.
When we want to make a new variant, we want to know in which specific area we would going to see that character or creature. Readability is like the main focus.
Went through several iterations on the design, the texture, the materials, and the camera testing.
The day after she gave me like, I don't know, what was that, 10 different variations? I was okay, now we are talking.
The emission on the spikes really did an awesome job to both on the silhouette and also to improve the readability. And in the end, we have the version that we were both happy with, and hand it over to the tech artist.
We had some really strong narrative direction in understanding how big of a role hatred played, and we knew that we needed one look to tie it all together. This hatred has one source, and it's all about Mephisto. For the Hollow specifically, we identified that we wanted to do some special work with the materials, with the shaders for those characters. Shaders are the code that runs on the GPU that takes in all sorts of inputs like textures and lighting and position and outputs what the object's surface is supposed to look like. We wanted a shader that was capable of adding this sludge layer, this hatred layer over top of it, and making it dynamic and animating so that it really looks like it was constantly undulating or writhing. So once we had this shader function, we were able to kind of apply that in all these different contexts, like the monsters, like the environment, the character armors even. Most of the shader work was done by Alex, who really took that shader function and made it work in all sorts of different contexts. And we also have the hatred add-ons to these characters, these tentacles, these writhing hatred growths all over them, which was a procedurally generated process that was largely run by Sky on our team.
The Hollows boss was kind of born of this idea of what does a pinnacle Hollows really look like. We have the Hollows family, and that was pretty well defined by the time that the Hollows boss kind of came up for concepting.
Our artist Victor had a lot of cool ideas for horror themes and really wanting to push visuals with contortions and like breaking the neck of this monster all over the place.
That's where we had the option to go, like, can we push it and really get that idea of what hatred and the Hollows are all about?
This inky black ichor that latched on to a once powerful spellcaster. It was such a great source of power that this particular Hollows monster turned into the Priestess of Hatred.
I'm Victor Lee, a principal concept artist on the Diablo team, and I concepted the Priestess of Hatred.
Victor Lee is one of the OGs from Diablo, and he's known for creating a lot of dark imagery. And every time we want to have a monster or boss, he's done all the greats, even Diablo himself. One of his monitors on the side of his desk is just like a dark black eye staring at him. And so when we needed something that's pure darkness, like, we had to tap Vic.
I feel like when we're talking about hatred, I kind of visualize it as like a black, webby-like thing. So I thought a spider configuration would work for this. So I did a few variations, some with souls, human souls trapped in the abdomen. It's like a purgatory because this creature consumes humans. I have this nagging feeling for a long time that why I felt it's not working, no matter how interesting the design is, I'm not pushing the boundaries. So I basically rethought the whole thing. A lot of our creatures are just like raw aggression. It's just muscly and just brutal. Maybe this one is more insidious. What if the human figure is not controlling the hatred, but it's the other way around? Like the hatred is actually mocking humanity. It's like dragging a puppet around. So what I did is I kept the human figure as a focal point, but the rest of the creature is this moving mass of basically a ball of hatred. It broke a lot of rules, but I just felt like this just fits. So I went ahead with it and rendered it out.
I was looking at the concept for the first time with the designer on the feature, Charles, and we were kind of in this stunned silence for a little bit because it was this reaction of, this thing is so cool. And then we started thinking, how are we even going to make this thing move?
Typically, our monsters are bipedal or they're quadrupeds. How's it gonna move? We can't rely on walk cycles anymore. How's it gonna rotate? We can't rely on, the built-in rotation stuff without it looking weird as hell. It was clear that in order to make this like animate and look natural, we were gonna have to pretty much dive into uncharted territory. We wanted it to move in a very unique way. We wanted it to somersault through the air and be super unpredictable and zippy and just have like ridiculous animations as those tentacles are flying all over the place.
We had that narrative and kind of drive to make it formless, and with our conventional rigging that we can do that.
We were doing prototyping before the feature even kicked off. Like, we were already meeting with animation and tech art to say, hey, we have this thing, we think it's really cool, but we need help figuring this out. So we had a lot of early collaboration, which was really what set us up for success.
When the animator came back with it, going from post to post rather than your normal animations, I was like, yes, that's it. That's what Hatred should feel like.
When you first find the Priestess of Hatred, it's going to look like a lifeless human corpse. And you're like, doesn't look like a boss fight. I'm in the boss arena, what's going on? But as you approach, you see that the body gets pulled into a giant pool of hatred, and then out of that pool of hatred comes this giant mass of tentacles. And that is the boss. So after animation, it gets to come to me, and I get to do all of the really cool visual effects at the end, show what those tentacles are doing when they impact the ground, when they slap something, when they hit the player. It really brings the entire thing together. The vomit attack is really gross because there's like this part of the torso of the humanoid that has been kind of hollowed out and now has teeth. The tentacles come out from the mass and they grab the humanoid and kind of pull the body back so that the slit in the belly opens up and all of the hatred just pours out in a straight beam. It's pretty gross.
The Hollows are just such a unique family. From the moment they spawn in on your screen, you can tell that they are different. They have just such unique behaviors and animations.
We were able to execute on a vision that's really just so different than what we typically do.
The whole process made me feel very proud of our whole team.
Everyone just got it. They understood what the monster was, they got the vision, and it just worked.
The eye on the screen has many functions. It keeps me in the right frame of mind. What we're doing is dark. It should be horrifying. I should feel the fear while I'm doing it. It's a reminder of that. The eye also serves as a warning. Like, get moving. Don't dwell too long and wander around, you know. Get this thing moving. Get the work done.
Hello. I'm just like shuffling papers, trying to grab something really quickly. Welcome to another Diablo 4 Campfire Chat. My name is Adam Fletcher. Of course, I'm joined by two familiar faces on our Campfire Chats. We have Mr. Adam Jackson, Mr. Colin Feiner. Hello, everyone. It's been a little while since we've seen everyone. We obviously have lots of has changed since our last stream. We ended up launching Vessel of Hatred, which is really awesome to see. Tons of players online checking out all the new features within Diablo 4, and of course, the Spiritborn as well. We've been hearing a lot about the Spiritborn. Seems a little
awesome.
Obvious. Awesome.
It's
and
too
very
weak, right?
It's too weak.
Yeah,
that's
what we've heard.
that's
Definitely
apparently
make it more awesome.
what we most definitely heard. But no, it is a little strong, and we've heard that from a lot of people. We'll be talking about that a little bit today. But first, before we do jump in, I do want to talk about some upcoming plans that we have for streams. Obviously, we're doing this stream right now for the mid-season update. The mid-season update is actually currently scheduled to release next week. We won't have patch notes immediately after this stream. As you know, we're doing this stream on a Tuesday, which is a little bit of a different day for us. We typically end up doing these streams later in the week when we do release those patch notes, but you will have patch notes later this week. We just need to get them through localization, make sure everyone sees them, and we get all the final changes in them before we actually do release them. But you will have the final patch notes for mid-season update later this week. And then, again, mid-season update next week. We will be back next week for another stream. So back-to-back weeks for streams. Lots of streams coming up. So this one's going to be a pretty quick one to go over mid-season update. Yep. And then next week, we're actually going to talk about the Season 7 PTR. I should actually call it Patch 2.1 PTR is specifically the name of it. We're going to be talking about all the changes that are coming with Patch 2.1. That stream is also going to be a little earlier than when PTR is planning on actually starting. That's only because for those here in the US that are aware of it, the Thanksgiving holiday is coming up towards the end of November, and we won't have people in the office. So we want to make sure that we can do the stream a little early and talk to everyone about the patch 2.1 PTR before the end of the month. PTR itself is planning on starting after the holidays. It's or after that Thanksgiving holiday in the U.S. And then for the notes regarding PTR, we'll have that before the holidays. So everyone get to, at least in the U.S., they can eat turkey, read patch notes, and then elsewhere,
perfect thing.
They can just read patch notes. And so we have a lot of stuff coming up and a lot to talk about, but. Before we do get towards some of the other items, I know Colin, you want to talk a little bit about where we're at with D4 at the moment?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll try and keep it short and sweet. For the mid-season, we actually think, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we think about the game currently. We've changed a lot over the past year. We've changed itemization. We've changed all of the progression. And generally, I think, we've seen a ton of positive feedback around a lot of the progression changes made in X1, which is fantastic. We're really excited to make a lot of these changes. I think it's hit a lot of the goals in terms of opening up what builds you can actually play and experience a lot of the end game, which is great. Of course, there's, Spiritborn kicking ass and Pit Tier 150, but otherwise, there's a lot of builds that sort of can cut it in the end game, starting in Torment 1. And I think that's been super sort of successful for us. And I also think a lot of the sort of itemization changes we made in terms of ancestral items, we think that they're a little bit on the low side. We'll talk a little bit more next week in the PTR in terms of buffing those. But we think it's actually pretty cool that there's those chase items that people are looking for. And I think just generally we're pretty happy with how a lot of the things landed. And right now we're sort of taking a step back and seeing, okay, now that we've made a lot of these changes, what are the more iterative steps we're going to take in the next year in terms of tightening up a lot of things? Full disclosure, I think we missed the mark a little bit on material tuning and things like that. So we're not looking
had to do a couple updates on material tuning. Just a couple.
So we're really looking at tightening up a lot of those things and sort of making more iterative changes to the overall progression of the game. And we hope that creates some more stability, and that sort of lets us, put more time and focus on balance and adding more things and sort of leveling up the game in that sort of way.
Yeah, just thinking back a year ago, so much has changed in our systems, right? We did all of our combat math over again. We changed resistances. We changed how loot drops in, the whole upgrade system there in Season 4. Unique's got a big overhaul. There's been so much change in things. I'm looking forward to having a chance for things to kind of settle down and we can fine-tune and refine the existing systems that we have now that we have so many ways of progressing your character, making yourself stronger. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement inside of these systems to make them kind of better, which I know people have been requesting a lot. So We're looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's really about refining what we currently have. We feel like the structure is really strong right now.
Yeah, most definitely. And I know with this mid-season update, of course, the biggest topic that we've been hearing a lot is around class balance, specifically around Spiritborn right now and how it is performing very well compared to some of the other classes. And so, Mr. Adam Jackson, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the class balance.
Yeah, let's talk about classes. We've got a lot to go over today. So first, just to give an overview of kind of what I'm going to talk about. First, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the state of Season 6 and kind of how we see things and how things are going. And then we're going to give you a preview of some of the changes that we're going to be doing for all of the classes. Normal disclaimer here, we're not going to be covering everything that we're going to do here in the patch. There's going to be a lot more notes than what I'm showing today, but just to kind of give you an idea of what's coming for each class and kind of what you can look forward to. So yeah, the current state of Season 6. So, a whole lot of people are enjoying the Spiritborn. I think this class has been really successful. We've been hearing that it's a lot of fun. People are really liking kind of the way that you build, the way that you play, and just the class in general, which is really gratifying for the team. Just for some stats here, 62% of all players have played the Spiritborn. So, when you think, there's 6 classes in the game now and 62% of people are playing it, that's kind of a lot of love for the class, which is pretty exciting to see. And to give you a basis of comparison here, the Sorceress in Season 5 was the most played class, and she was at 32%. So, to give you an idea, and that was, Lightning Spear meta, and, this class was really, really good. A lot of people had fun. And so you can kind of compare there of just how many people kind of logged into the expansion and enjoyed that. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, just a few, right? So kind of the state of the game. The Spiritborn is performing quite a bit better than other classes, which we want to dig deep, do a little bit of a deep dive into how and why and how we think about it. Largely, a big culprit of this is actually due to unintended interactions that the class has with how some things scale and other issues. But then there's also another component that there are some balance issues with the class itself. And so it's pretty easy to conflate these two and be like, well, how much of the power is due to bugs or unintended interactions and how much of it is just some things have high numbers? We do think it's a bit of both, but the unintended interactions, I think, are the lion's share of what's going on here. But on the bright side, the other classes are actually performing fairly well when compared to one another. So if you look at, Barbarian compared to Necromancer, or Druid compared to Sorceress, they're actually pretty close and competitive when we see pit tier clears and other content, how they're doing, which is a really good sign for us. So when we're thinking of kind of what we're going to do going forward and how we balance the game, there's kind of two really statements that we need to think about when it comes to balance. The first one that's really important is we want players to feel strong and powerful and to kind of feel like they can break the game and find these crazy builds and do awesome things with. And then on the other side of the coin, we also want kind of, class balance and parity when it comes to their power level with one another, right? We don't want a situation that exists for a really long time where, the only answer is to play Barbarian, for example, compared to everything else, and that's all that you kind of be pushed into playing. So these two things are kind of at odds with one another, and we've kind of gone back and forth on our strategies here. If you remember back when we launched Diablo 4, we really actually prioritized class parity and harmony over, everything else, over the power fantasy of the game. And what this resulted in was every time that someone found a build that was really strong and crazy, we just kind of would fix the bugs or nerf the build, and we ended up kind of playing whack-a-mole every time that players found something cool. And it ended up being that Blizzard kind of turned into the fun police, which players really didn't like. We got a pretty big reaction at the end of the launch period and into Season 1 when we tried to only think about class parity over kind of the power fantasy of Diablo. And in Season 2, we kind of really turned things around in the way that we thought about the game, and we really prioritized, power fantasy and this idea that our players kind of want to break the game and be crazy. The big shining example there was Ball Lightning for you Sorceress mains. Where that skill, had an unintended interaction. It was really, really good, but players really liked it and had a lot of fun. And so if you remember a long time ago, we came on live stream and we talked about this, and we kind of said that we were going to allow players to kind of break the game in this way until the next season, right? There are some exceptions that we'll make where we'll fix things in the mid-season if it's impacting the performance of the game or the experience of other players, like if your build is causing a bunch of lag or something. Then we'll fix it right away. I think in Season 6 we had this example with the Evade build with Spiritborn. But overall, players really liked this strategy a whole lot more, right? They got to enjoy this kind of, the point of playing ARPGs and Diablo in particular, of really making a powerful character and being able to smash faces with it, right?
Yeah, and the sort of philosophy here is sort of goes even beyond classes, right? If you remember in Season 1, we were just nerfing every dungeon that was too performant, and any time there was content that was a little bit out of budget, we'd nerf it. So it's really about sort of establishing a trust with you, the player, during that season, and not trying to sort of force you to exploit the fun early and often. And it's really about sort of making sure that when you play a season, you know that season is going to work the same throughout the season, and we're not going to change things midway on you.
Yeah, I think another factor to think about too is that now that we've added a lot of progression with tempering and masterworking, that there's a lot of time investment that goes into making a build, even if you know it's something that might be unintended, but it's really, really good and crazy, and you spend 40 plus 100 hours, whatever, making it, and then if we kind of pull the rug out from under you, it's worrisome to do that to players, I think, in the middle of a season.
It's all about respecting your time, right?
Yeah. So in that vein, we are not planning to nerf the Spiritborn in the mid-season patch, which I think is the thing that's on everybody's mind. Is Blizzard going to do it? And we've decided that we think it's best for the game to not do it in the mid-season. So in Season 7, and we'll be talking about this a little more in the live stream next week, we are going to be fixing all of the unintended interactions that we found with Spiritborn. We'll also be making balance adjustments to bring them in line with the other classes. So you can expect a lot of change there. But until then, enjoy what you've got now while it's there.
I think it's worth digging into the unintended interactions part too, right? Because it's not necessarily like you picked one legendary Paragon node and now your build is ridiculous, right?
No,
it's like you're sort of, for lack of a better word, abusing some of the mechanics, right? If we know, Viscous Shield is scaling off of max HP, players have poured tons of time and effort trying to max Masterwork their max life and getting all the perfect tempers and item affixes. We don't want to take that away from you, right? That's not something that we're trying to necessarily destroy all the time commitment you put into your character by fixing these things. So it's not as simple as just fix the unintended interaction, right?
Yeah. But just reiterating, it is those unintended interactions are things that we will look at when we get to Season 7 and we start off with Season 7. So and obviously with mid-season update, enjoy it through Season 6, but come Season 7, you'll see a preview of some of these changes. Absolutely. With Season 7 in our PTR stream next week. You'll see some of the changes that we plan on doing.
Yeah, there's a lot coming there, but this isn't about that.
This isn't about that today, but just
there's a lot
so
coming there for everybody that'll be really exciting. But yeah, so, but the caveat to all of this is if something does come up that impacts other players in regards to the game's performance, or you're causing lag for the server or whatever, we will be fixing those types of interactions as soon as possible. Like the evade build is our example, right? We will fix those right away because we want to make sure that the game is, performant for everybody. So in the mid-season, though, we are going to be buffing all of the other classes in the mid-season patch, but I want to caveat this a little bit with, it's not going to be to the level of Spiritborn right now because a lot of that power is due to bugs and unintended things. So we're really going to be buffing the classes to have more parity and harmony with each other, but then also to kind of where we plan to bring the Spiritborn to after, the bugs and stuff has been fixed. So you will be seeing number buffs, but I wouldn't expect to be at the same level as what Spiritborn is doing right now in the mid-season. Just to be clear, because of that, the bugs are actually a big part of the power level.
Yeah, and we don't want to create an arms race, right? Where it's like, okay, everyone gets to be pit tier 150, then the next natural ask is like, okay, I guess we're adding Torment 5, 6, 7, 8, right? So we don't want to sort of get to a place where, you're chewing through 12 different Torment tiers. So we're really being cautious about the arms race here. We actually think the rest of the classes are in a really good spot.
Yeah, and I think you can count on that going forward too, not even just right now, but this is kind of the way that we think of things in general. It's like if all the classes are kind of in this realm kind of close to each other and then one has something unintended that brings like way up here, everybody is always like, well, let's just bring everybody else to this.
Yeah.
But if we do that every time, like you start with this difference and then you're here and then you do this and then you do this and you're exponentially going to increase the power level of the game just insanely high really fast, right? And that's not our goal, right? So if there's something that stands out, we'll let people do it for a while, but then we're going to bring it back the next season.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that I think you can mostly count on us doing balance and how the choices that we make and why.
Definitely. And the same goes if there's like a underperforming class. It's like 20 pit tiers behind everyone else, right? We have no problems with like bringing that up to where the rest of the classes are.
Correct. Yeah. The real goal is to get everything in a pretty good realm of having harmony with one another. And, when something's out of balance, it's okay for a season, but then we're going to try to bring it back, right? That's kind of always our goal. So yeah, let's get into the class updates for all the classes. We're just going to be going through one by one and kind of giving you a preview of what to see. Again, this is only a preview. There's more than what we're going to show on screen.
Yeah, way more. Yeah. Right? This is just like a couple examples within the stream itself. And of course, again, just a reminder, patch notes later this week. Once we get everything kind of sorted, we're abnormal time for a stream on a Tuesday. Normally we do it on Thursday and usually have patch notes then. So I expect the patch notes later this week.
Yeah, let's get to it. So starting off with Barbarian, we got some baseline core skill buffs for pretty much all of them, right? You can see here Upheaval, Hammer of the Ancients, Double Swing, and Rend. Basically, we always hear it that they have a little bit of trouble leveling. Their late game is really good, but just getting there it can be a little bit painful. So we're just going to be squeezing up those numbers a little bit more. So you'll have a better time leveling. You'll also be a little bit stronger overall, but all the builds will get a little bit better. And then also we have some buffs to underperforming legendaries and uniques. Here's an example with an aspect, Battle Mad. You can see here in the before, kind of what's on live right now, is it's basically just a way to give you berserking, rewarding you for weapon swapping. And now we're adding a hefty multiplier to it. So now this is going to be a real offensive aspect that's going to give you, a bunch of power. You're going to get up to a 40% damage buff when you're doing the weapon swapping mechanic. So we've kind of finding these places where we can input damage or these underused legendaries or uniques, and then adding a reason to make them more compelling. Next we got Druid. So all of the Druid's key passives are getting buffed. I'm giving a couple of examples here, but I'm pretty sure all of them the numbers went up. So Lupine Ferocity, you've got the crit damage going from 70 to 100% bonus, and then the bonus damage to injured enemies going from 140 to 200%, which is pretty meaty. And then the one with Nature passive, that buffs your companions, that bonus damage is going from 60 to 80%, which is a pretty big amount. And then also legendary unique buffs in the same way of the Barbarian. So here, this is an offensive aspect, even though I'd argue it's kind of more utility, but the Storm Chasers aspect where it makes your tornadoes smart, where they seek enemies. We're just adding a pretty good multiplier to that. So Tornado builds Rejoice, you're going to get up to 50% more damage now, just from taking this aspect that you were probably taking anyways. So just making you happier to take the same things. Next one, the Basilisk. This is the Earth Druid dealing with Petrify. So before, it was that first time that you hit an enemy, you'll petrify them, and then every time you petrify them, it deals a bunch of damage. We're just making that a lot more usable, so that way you can feel more comfortable taking it. So now it's going to be when you hit a healthy enemy, you'll petrify them. And also, this will work against bosses. So every 5 seconds that you hit a boss, you'll attempt to petrify, and then you'll get that bonus damage proc. So basically, this unique now will be giving you a damage proc every 5 seconds against bosses, which will be a lot better than now, where it doesn't really do much to bosses at all. Next, we got the Necromancer. So they're getting buffs for all of their basic skills. I'm showing Decompose here as an example. The damage is almost being doubled. Your essence gain per second is going up by quite a bit. And also now it'll scale with attack speed bonuses. So now if you build attack speed or you have it, Decompose is going to be generating essence for you quicker, which it didn't used to before. They're also getting some buffs and kind of some simple functionality changes to some passives. So an example here with the Evulsion passive is before you would get increased crit damage to vulnerable enemies. And now we're just going to remove that double requirement there of focusing on crit and vuln. So now you'll just get more damage against vulnerable enemies. So it's just a lot more usable. It's now you can use it more generally. You don't have to worry about critting all the time to get the bonus. So it'll just be more consistent. And then we've got some unique buffs here. These are just number buffs. Some examples. We've got Morticrux, so that your chance to spawn the Skeletal Simulacrum is going up. And Howl from Below, you're just getting more corpse explosion damage out of it. So just tuning up these numbers to make them competitive. Next, we've got the Rogue. So similar to the Barbarian, the Rogue is also getting buffs to the core skills. Penetrate shot damage is going up. Flurry damage is going up as some examples. Also, their key passives are getting a bit better too. Victimize, the damage scaling is going up for your vulnerable damage bonus. And Precision is going up by a pretty hefty amount, from 15% to 20% of your crit damage bonus. So they'll just be a lot more potent. And next we've got the Sorceress, kind of keeping on the theme of buffing key passives. So this one we're actually doing a bit of a functionality change. So Combustion before used to be that you get a big multiplier to your burning damage, 60%. And then after that, we kind of wanted to reward you for putting different burning sources on enemies, and you would get a little bit of a bonus per source. Now we're doing away with that second part, so you're still getting the burning damage buff just across the board. But now we're actually going to tie it to itemization, so now you'll just be getting an additional multiplier based on your damage to burning enemies bonus. So now you're going to be looking for that, in your gear and your Paragon and other places, so you can now just really buff up the burning damage, and you don't have to worry about putting a bunch of sources on enemies. Next, in a similar vein, Avalanche. This key passive is just getting better and is going to be tuning into a damage bonus as well. So before it was that your frost skills have a lucky hit chance to make your next cast of a few different skills consume no mana and be stronger. And when you hit vulnerable enemies, it just made the chance better. And now we're just buffing up the chance baseline, going from 10 to 30% to get that free cast and bonus damage. But now the actual damage that you deal is going to be increased by your damage against vulnerable enemies stat. So now we've added basically a scaling multiplier to this key passive, so it should be doing a lot more damage over time. Next, we got Aspect of Piercing Cold. This is for you Ice Shards enjoyers. This one's getting a whole lot better. So before it used to be that the number of pierces was part of the random roll, and then also the roll made it deal your subsequent hits deal less damage with Ice Shards, and now we flipped the script now, and now the amount of enemies that's going to pierce is going to be static, so you're just getting a more consistent value. But instead of doing less damage, you're going to deal more damage per enemy hit. So that actual difference of going from less to more is going to amount to a substantial increase in the amount of damage that this legendary is pumping out for Ice Shards. Makes a huge spread. Last but not least, for the sorceress, we introduced a couple of new legendary aspects in Vessel of Hatred. We've got them, they're scaling with charged bolts and incinerate. And both of these aspects were dealing what we call flat damage, or it was like a certain damage amount, and it didn't really scale up as you scaled the skill up. And we've changed that for both of these. So the aspect of charge flash and the aspect of overheating will now both scale as you get more charge bolt or more incinerate damage. These ones will be dealing a lot more damage as well. So these ones will just scale with you and be a lot better over time as you get stronger. And next, last but not least, we got the Spiritborn. So we did do some changes here. We really mostly did small buffs to skills that haven't really been being used or seen less success. So we got Razor Wings here. The damage is going up a bit. And also, Razor Wings used to have actually a set cooldown between casts. And now we remove that cooldown, so now you can actually cast Razor Wings faster as you build attack speed, like all other skills in the game. We also did some small buffs to Withering Fist. The poison damage went up, the slow went up, and one of the upgrades will now spread to more targets when you use it. And then we also got some buffs to Toxic Skin, which isn't really seen much play by players. We basically just did some small buffs to its damage, both baseline, the enhancement, and one of the upgrades, the variants of it.
And these are mostly just on the skills that people aren't actually using right now.
Correct,
Our goal isn't to like make the Spiritborn even stronger.
No, these are. This is tuning within the builds of the
We're
class.
most definitely seeing chat, and they're like, "Wait, Spiritborn buffs," and it's like these are like skills that really no one is using. So we want to make sure that.
I mean, I can just buff Quill Volley.
There you go, Quill Volley.
Yeah.
Most definitely needs buffs. Apparently, no. But it's for things that we just haven't seen a lot of play within Spiritborn players. And I know a lot of players are looking at some of the numbers, and they're also these are just like baseline numbers on some of these skills. Yeah. Obviously, there's a lot of interactions that happen beyond that, from tempering to the gear that you have and everything like that. That will end up obviously enhancing those even more. So we're expecting to, as Adam had mentioned before, we're not expecting to see the other classes jump up to the same power as the Spiritborn, because the Spiritborn, again, is using some unintended interactions right now, but those will be addressed in Season 7. So with these classes specifically, they will get some additional buffs so that they can stay competitive amongst each other. They're staying together as a pack, but being a little bit stronger here with the mid-season update.
Yeah, the idea with mid-season, this is probably going to be true with most mid-season updates, is that we're trying to move everything a little closer together, and also to set up for the next season where there will be a lot more upheaval.
Yeah.
Right, so we're like prepping everything to be kind of close. And then,
upheaval.
Oh yeah.
I was like, ha ha ha.
But you know, we're getting ready for season 7, which will be a lot.
Is that an Easter egg? No. Cool, awesome. Well, I know we have again, Adam had mentioned that this is just a very small.
It's a lot more than just that.
There's a lot more than just what we showed here. That would be the shortest patch notes ever. But we do actually have a patch notes coming out later this week that will have all the different class changes and everything with the mid-season update. We do have a few other things that are actually also hitting related to rune words, and a thing that a lot of people have been talking about. Which is shrines specifically.
Yes.
So we can shrines.
What's wrong with shrines?
What's wrong with shrines? What's wrong with the conduit shrine that I don't purposely ignore? Yeah.
You mean the real cursed shrine?
There you go.
All right, jumping into rune words first. We are doing some tuning changes to rune words. I will tease a little bit that we do have some more impactful changes coming in Season 7, so tune in next week for them. But in the meantime, we did do some rune word buffs to ones that aren't being used as much, mostly by lowering offering costs. Some examples here, we got the Moni rune word. The offering that you get is increased from 25 to 35. The Ahu rune word, the offering is being increased a lot from 10 to 25 when hitting injured enemies. And then I'm just going to butcher it. I don't know how to say it, but the Se rune word. The wolf spirits are now always going to be unhindered. So, we often run into issues where companions and things like that have trouble getting to enemies, but since, they're spirits, so why would other things get in the way? So now they'll always be moving through enemies and getting to their targets a lot quicker. And then shrines, heard some feedback that they don't really scale too well. So the artillery, blast wave, and conduit shrines will now deal more damage, and they're going to scale with you based on your level and your paragon level. So as you level up, as you get stronger, the shrines will be getting more potent with you. We're going to kind of test it, let us know how it goes, see if you actually enjoy getting them and want to get them now. We do see some room maybe to do some more things to buff them further if needed, but we're going to be trying this as a first step to see how it goes.
Yeah, I know we've heard from a lot of people about, like, especially as you get to later levels and you're towards like endgame in Torment 4 and a conduit shrine appears and it's like, don't touch it because maybe that will make things slower, which it currently typically does for a lot of players, especially Spiritborn players. So it's cool to see updates to these shrines, and then of course, again, like feedback is really important for us to know, like, hey, did we hit the mark? Do we need to do additional things, or do we need to tweak anything? So let us know after you guys get a chance to check out the new adjustments to the shrine. So that'll be really important for us. Some other things that are coming down the line, we do have some in-game specific events and items that will be hitting here in the coming weeks is a little bit after mid-season update. We do actually have we're bringing back the Red-cloaked Horror, which is part of the Midwinter Blight event that we had last year, and we'll actually have a blog that details all the benefits and rewards out of this. It's like XP benefits, of course, that do come with this specifically, which is really great to have on top of another event that's coming, which is Mother's Blessing. And Mother's Blessing will also be, we'll have that in the blog. That blog is going to be hitting on Thursday, I believe. So keep an eye out. For Eternal players, we also have a cool little thing, like kind of like a welcome back booster type of event for them, or maybe it's not an event. I don't know how to coin it, but like, Colin, what does that entail?
Yeah, so we wanted to put together just something to get you back into the action. I know part of X1 ended up sort of marking a bunch of items as legacy, so we just wanted to give everyone a one-time booster to come back. We're going to level you to 50. We'll give you a build that we've made. We've made 3 different ones per class. You'll be able to use it. I'm sure everyone watching probably doesn't care, but we have, you will care about this if you haven't done this, is we're going to unlock all the altars of Lilith as part of that boost. So if you log in and just use it, and you haven't got all your altars,
get your altars for free.
Just get it for free.
Easy, nice.
Yeah, so. And if you're a base game Diablo 4 owner, you'll end up getting, I believe, 1 of those boosts, and then if you're a Vessel of Hatred, you'll end up getting 2 of those boosts on Eternal characters, which is kind of cool. So it's if you want to jump back in or anything, and you know, especially after the changes with, there goes my earpiece. I've been fumbling with it all day, and now it's gone. But I know a lot of players, specifically with Season 6 jumping back in, they noticed, as you mentioned, a lot of the gear went to legacy gear, so this kind of gives them a way of being able to kind of recover some of that, immediately get back into it. Exactly. And then I believe we also have another free trial coming up for any new players that want to check out the Spiritborn. The Spiritborn will actually be part of the free trial, and that will be coming up here in the coming weeks. And so all this will be in a blog on Thursday, which is really cool. And then, of course, as we mentioned at the start of the show, we have another stream next week. We'll actually have a date for the stream later this week for players, so that you guys can keep an eye out for that. But that is our patch 2.1 PTR stream, and that one will be pretty beefy. We have a lot to talk about regarding patch 2.1, and of course everything that's going to be coming with Season 7. We are super stoked for that. The stream again will be a little early because of the Thanksgiving holiday, so a little bit earlier than when PTR is going to start. We do plan on having those notes available for players before the Thanksgiving holiday, and then I would expect that PTR to start after the Thanksgiving holiday, so when everyone is back in post-holiday and is able to monitor and see how everything is going with PTR and taking the feedback. So we'll have a stream next week. You'll see, of course, some of us back on stream next week for that. And I believe we'll be joined by Mr. Dan Tangway again, who will be in Albany and chiming in on all the stuff that's coming with Season 7 and patch 2.1. So lots of big changes coming specifically with that. I know we do want to jump into some Q&A really quickly. So if you guys have any questions, we have chat enabled on Twitch, so twitch.tv/Diablo. If you're watching on other channels and stuff like that, that's where we do take in specific questions, but feel free to drop in any questions. We'll try to get through as many as we can here. Again, this is just kind of an abbreviated stream for the mid-season update, and then we'll be back in a week.
Next week, yeah.
I get it. We took a little bit of a break from streaming, so it kind of makes sense. So that we'll be back pretty quickly. But I know our first question that we have is related to ancestral items. We get a lot of questions about ancestral items. I've seen a lot of questions. Oh, this earpiece is driving me nuts. Question number one, Adam, fix your earpiece. There's a plant right here, which you guys can't see, so I'm like having to read the screen. Any updates to ancestral items? Do you guys have any updates or news to share regarding that?
Yeah, I know we saw a lot of confusion in terms of maxing out a lot of the Codex of Power. In X1, we actually added roughly what we call ranks, 5 ranks, to a lot of the legendary aspects that were ancestral only. And I know that caused a lot of confusion. So currently how it works is ancestral items have a higher upper bounds on the rank that you can achieve for that aspect. And we have seen quite a bit of people struggling to max out their aspects. Generally, that was the goal, is that we do want to grind, right? Like we think it's good that you can sort of get an aspect right away, but we like that once you have that play style assembled, we still want things that you need to work on. That being said, we think it's a little bit too aggressive right now. So we are going to be making some changes, which we will detail next week, in terms of how that actually works. But just know that currently ancestral items are the sort of where you find the max rank of a lot of those aspects. But you can still find them on anything else that isn't ancestral, the lower version.
I know, and we'll be talking more about ancestral items next week, specifically.
Yeah, the drop rates.
A lot of stuff regarding that. Is there any plans? This is I'm taking a few questions from the forums and of course chat, because we did post this on the forums beforehand. Urza from the forum says, can we get boss materials to stack like runes or maybe even higher? Are there any plans for something like that?
Yeah, we are looking into it. There's things on our side in terms of like storage and duping that we're a little bit worried about, but we're looking at making a change sometime in the longer future.
Question from a couple people like Archangel 890 and I'm not gonna Dragonage says any chances that you guys will potentially change like XP gain, maybe the growth to Paragon 300? Is there any plans on maybe making adjustments or tuning specifically on that end?
Currently not at the moment. I think it's something we're monitoring though in terms of the feedback. We do like that you can get just about everything within the first 200 Paragon levels, and everything from there has a pretty steep diminishing return in terms of power. So what we don't want to say to you all is like you need to grind 200 hours to unlock your build and do all the things that are sort of playstyle defining, which we define as like the sort of glyphs and the legendary nodes. So we've seen actually a lot of positive feedback that like you can get your build online and that you still have something to work towards. The sooner we sort of short circuit that Paragon grind, the more we sort of get back to that pre-expansion 1 state where you just don't get anything from killing monsters because you're Paragon 300 in the first 2 weekends. So currently, we're looking at monitoring it and we're super open to the feedback. But so far, we've seen a good amount of positivity around it.
I think it's kind of in line with what you were talking about with the legendary powers, right? How like those last 5 ranks are on ancestral items only. And so our idea is like, we want you to get your build online and play the way you want within a pretty quickly or whatever. But then you have something to work towards, like incrementally to become stronger and stronger. And that we're okay with taking a long time.
Totally.
As long as it's not like cutting you off from the build at all. Right?
Yeah, it's about getting you into the fun and like making sure that your build is blasting, but you have things to sort of use that build to blast for, right?
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's like the other thing that people are probably forgetting about is like we do have these events coming up and stuff, which also benefit some of the XP and everything like that, which will be a good opportunity for players to like be able to, if they really want, because as we've seen, there is a reward for getting to Paragon 300 and stuff. So if it allows players that opportunity to kind of use those events to be able to boost that, and we have obviously Red-cloaked horror stuff coming up here, and of course we have Mother's Blessing. So there's opportunities to help with some of that XP based off of those events specifically. So there is a question regarding materials again. Can we expect any additional buffs for drop rates on Rawhide, Iron, Forgotten Souls, anything like that?
Yeah, so actually it is in the mid-season, but we did buff Legion events. I know that was a personal favorite of a lot of folks. For the mid-season, for Season 7, we're taking a look at just sort of buffing the various sources and also really drilling down on like what are the bottlenecks players are having and iterating towards that. There's no major changes coming in Season 7, like we're not going to quadruple the amount of materials across the game, But it is something, again, in the spirit of like tightening the things that we have. We are actively looking at a lot of the material inflows and outflows, and we want to give you the tools to sort of get the materials that you're looking for. We're sort of what we're trying to do is ensure that there are things that you still care about, right? And you still want to grind. It's still in that spirit of like, it's walking that fine line of there are things to work towards without it feeling super tedious. So that's what we're trying to tighten and work towards.
There is a question regarding this from Remsterma says, do you have any plans on start bringing in new mid-season mechanics? I think for that more so, I would expect like larger mechanics, content changes, and stuff like that to happen around new seasons. As opposed to a mid-season update. I think we look at taking mid-season updates, making tweaks to balance items or anything that we're hearing feedback from, so that we can spend most of our concentration and focus on really putting in some of these newer type of content pieces around new seasons specifically.
Yeah, I think that going forward is mid-season is a time to just like tweak and iterate and use rework existing things, but we're really putting all of our bucks on like bigger upheavals, larger changes, lots of new stuff into the beginning of the season. So next week will be pretty exciting. We got a lot of new stuff coming in, but that's where we're kind of targeting that to make that kind of a big moment and exciting time to come back and play.
There is a question from Casual Dragon regarding Undercity drops and asking, is there any plans to potentially fix those, make those better, specifically on that end?
Yeah, so this sort of leads into, there are some ancestral drop rate changes that we want to talk about next week, but in general, what that'll mean is all the loot across the game will generally get better. So it is something that we're working on.
I'm about to take this earpiece and throw it across the room because it just keeps popping out and it's driving me insane. That's a question from Pez Radar. Question from Finamdar says, Diablo, any stability fixes coming? Been seeing a whole lot more crashes since the last couple patches. I will say that we've been we can actually see whenever a player, the series, we can actually see whenever a player actually crashes. We know it. We get logs from it on our end. I know that the engineering team here has been doing a ton of work on working to get the game more stable. You've probably seen a bunch of different small client patches go out. We actually just re-enabled like DLSS in a client patch that went out yesterday. There are additional changes and more reviewing that's being done from our side to ensure that the game is running very stable. So expect to see more of that as we get through this season and of course into next season, because our goal is to make sure baseline everyone can jump in without any of these types of issues and everything. And shout out to our engineering team. I know they've been working long and hard on figuring all this stuff out. They've been that's like their top priority right now.
They actually, behind the scenes, we even collaborate with them a lot on doing various things related to game performance under the hood, like making skills cleaner, making interactions cleaner. Like we're constantly doing stuff to make the game run smoother in the background. Pretty much every patch, like we're fixing multiple things. So it's definitely something that we're always working on actively.
Why so Blue Panda Bear? Any chance on Tempering Skulls can be used more than once? Investing time to finally get a rare drop and it bricks kind of doesn't feel too great. Any thoughts on Tempering Scrolls, how that's been going?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something we hear a lot of feedback on, and it's something that we're sort of taking an incremental approach, right? Like with the X1 or the expansion 1 changes, we made it so that a lot of the recipes are 3. We also added, of course, the scroll of tempering or restoration in expansion 1 to see how that sort of changes things. So we're just really taking a measured approach. If we see still there's a lot of feedback that it just still isn't hitting that mark, we're absolutely open to changing things like potentially letting it be used more than once. And we're just sort of monitoring at this point.
We are getting questions about the armory. Stay tuned. TM. Soon. TM. We'll have information on that. As you guys know, that has been in development. It's something that we've already confirmed about. We'll be talking more about it here soon, TM. Keep your eyes peeled. Is that the term? Keep your eyes peeled. I don't know. There's a saying that stay tuned. I don't know. Last question here that we have before we head off is Hole's Transition says, will Dance and Knives get buffs and any changes to be more compatible with collecting loot, like opening doors, etc.? When you're spinning to win with your knives and stuff. Is there any way or any plans of potentially having them seamlessly move around a dungeon or something like that from that end?
Nothing on my radar right now, but that's a good note to take.
It's a good note to take. It's a good note to take. Rogues want to spin to win.
Yeah.
And
I
never
am playing
stop,
it. I know
ever.
you have to do all this setup and snapshot, and then you have to open the door. So we do know that it's a thing.
Yeah. So we'll see. Well, stay tuned. It's another thing to stay tuned. So again, thanks again everyone for jumping in, providing questions and everything from our end. We will have patch notes later this week, so stay tuned for that. The blogs for Mother's Blessing, the Red-cloaked Horror, our Eternal Boost stuff, everything will be out on Thursday. So also check out for that blog. Mid-season update hits next week, so patch notes will be out before the mid-season update. And you guys will also hear about our stream date next week for the patch 2.1 PTR. So we'll be talking a whole bunch. That will be another beefy stream. This one I know is a little bit short. That one's going to be a little bit more beefy than this one. But look at this. 2 streams in 2 weeks. We're about to do it. So we will see you guys next week. Again, huge thanks to Colin, Adam, for joining us. Our wonderful mini Khazra over here. Super awesome. Super cute. Love you, Aaron. So, but thank you guys. We'll see you guys next week for our patch 2.1 PTR stream. And check out the blogs and patch notes later this week. See you guys.